studied journalism at Boston University, and while I don't think you need to go to J school to be a journalist, I think you can learn that on the job. I think I learned a lot of just really good practices, right? We would do something called walk and talks. One of my professors, she would have us pick some kind of a topic, something that was happening locally in Boston, and just go up to strangers on the street and ask them about it, and ask if you could quote them, and make sure to get their name, their age, and just kind of get used to this practice of going up to people that you don't know to ask for their thoughts, their opinions, their expertise. You know, we're in this world where we're all operating behind screens all the time, and it's so easy to do your job from behind a screen, but then I still like to make sure I get out on the ground, meet people, go to events, make connections, and just see what, you know, people are saying, because you can get lost in a bubble.
Hi everyone, welcome to Changing Reality. My name is Harsha, your host, and we're here with amazing Rebecca, who's a reporter at TechCrunch, for another exciting episode of our show. So to start off, you are absolutely amazing. I've read your articles. That's how I found out about you and reached out. But as I read, it's obvious that you not only know your subject matter really well, you have a way with words, and you're also just really good at building a story and making what could be dry subject into something engaging yet factual.
Wow, that's really nice of you to say.
Well, I can say that because, it's true. But obviously you have this talent for journalism. And I'm curious, when did that talent spark? Do you always want to be a journalist, or did you just magic 8-ball it?
Yeah, I think I did always want to. I always wanted to write. When I was young, I was always writing, poems and short stories and things. And then when I got to high school, I immediately wanted to join the school newspaper and be a part of that. I always had something to say. I was very opinionated as a kid. And yeah, whenever we were kind of light on sections, I've got an idea, and I would just whip something together really fast. Maybe it was a book review, maybe it was an op-ed. And so I just really enjoyed that. And I actually remember writing I found recently a letter of recommendation from my English teacher to the university I ended up going to, which was Boston University. And in it, she wrote that I had told her once that I wanted to be on like the front row of the stage of history. And that's why I wanted to go into journalism. And that's why I ended up studying journalism. Like, I love history. I think journalism is an important part of that.
The front row of the stage of history. I'm going to have to quote you on that one.
Oh, please don't quote me. I think that's someone else. But
No, but that's very beautiful. And you ended up studying not just journalism, but journalism and history, right? Mm-hmm. Is there a reason for this intersection? I mean, one is literally in the future and one is in the past.
Well, one is in the now, right? And it's the now that's making, what we'll look back on. I think, I don't know, it's important to understand, and I learn this again every day, and as I cover my beat, and I get more entrenched in my beat, is having that institutional knowledge, being able to look back at the past and what has happened before really informs what is happening now, what could happen in the future. So I think it all kind of ties in together.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. You have to get you a future, then you can do past, present, and future. But what were maybe some of those formative experiences, in early college or even high school, that you take with you until today, that you inform, your voice maybe when you're writing?
It's hard from being a kid. Well, I mean, certainly I studied journalism at Boston University, and while I don't think you need to go to J school to be a journalist, I think you can learn that on the job. I think I learned a lot of just really good practices, right? We would do something called walk and talks. And one of my professors, Judy Rakowski, I remember, she would have us pick some kind of a topic, something that was happening locally in Boston, maybe, a change of fares on the subway or the trains, and just go up to strangers on the street and ask them about it, and ask if you could quote them, and make sure to get their name, their age, where they live, what they do for a living, and just kind of get used to this practice of going up to people that you don't know to ask for their thoughts, their opinions, their expertise. And I think that was really formative for me, as we're in this world where we're all operating behind screens all the time, and it's so easy to do your job from behind a screen, but then I still like to make sure I get out on the ground, meet people, go to events, make connections, and just see what, people are saying, because you can get lost in a bubble.
No, that's very well put, especially the part of the fact, we are living in a very digital age. I think that skill of being able to, again, walk up to someone and be like, just ask them what they think and to do it in a way that is, structured enough that you can capture that information, but authentic enough that, they're able to give their opinion. I think it's a really important art that transcends journalism. I think if we can all learn a little bit of that, it would just make our lives a lot more easier and a lot more, I would say, connected.
Oh yeah.
I will say a lot of me and my friends can't even call the pizza guy yet. So
yes, yes, I've met other like Gen Z journalists or whatever. I'm not sure if you're Gen Z, but people who are like, oh, I don't want to call them. I don't want to. And I'm like, you have to call. Just call and ask for help. Call and ask for their opinion. People like to help. If you're asking for their expertise, right? Often we're calling experts to be sources, to be like, hey, I don't understand this dynamic that's happening in the markets. Can you help me understand it? It's so much easier if they hear your voice rather than just, an email that's sent off that they can ignore.
So going on the tangent here a little bit, how do you work with these Gen Z journalists and reporters? Because it's not like as a Gen Z, we're very tech savvy, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I would like to think journalism has a bit more heart and connection than just the goodness of the tech world.
Well, how do I personally work?
Yeah.
With well, I mean,
give us the secret sauce.
I don't know how many I do work with right now, to be honest. They're just like any other people. I mean, I would like to think that, some of these people that I've spoken to, they're not people that I necessarily work with. But I like to just kind of explain to them that they must get over this ridiculous hurdle of being antisocial and afraid to speak to actual humans on the phone, because you get a lot out of it when you do, and just hoping to guide them towards that, right? And then also, I guess I can learn from them too, probably, I assume. I haven't yet, but
maybe they have something there.
There's something.
They're coming into it, yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of, at the early stages of a career in journalism, how do you first get into this field? Because I think a lot of us, we write for student papers, we have, this need and thirst for finding out what's happening in the world and putting it down on paper, or at least putting it down for the world to see. But we don't always know how to turn that into a career. Like, I know we spoke a little bit earlier of, a lot of people think, oh, I need to get the best internship, or I need to get the best opportunity to launch my career. But how did it actually go in real time for you?
Yeah, look, and I don't think there's anything wrong with going for those internships, those fellowships, those programs. I think you can make really good connections. I think you can get a lot of the journalism grunt work out of the way earlier on than I did. I kind of came at it through a back door. I did write for the school paper. I did have some internships at university that I think weren't particularly enlightening, but after I graduated university, I decided that I wasn't sure I wanted to go into journalism, because at the time it was all going digital and it was all freelance, and our teachers were telling us we needed to learn how to write pitches and come up with stories that way instead of being assigned them. And I don't know, I was young and I wanted to just travel and have a little bit of fun. So I left the country. I traveled, backpacked for a few years, went through South America, lived in Sicily for a little bit, ended up in Australia. And throughout all of that, I decided, okay, I'm going to start a travel blog. So I think that was a lot of fun. It's now gone. I forgot to renew my WordPress subscription and it's gone. I killed it. I was so upset. But I think I learned a lot about like paying attention to where I was, seeing like what makes a story, what is interesting. And so I also just got some writing chops down, right? I was just exploring my creative voice. So that was fun. And then I ended up in Australia living there for a little bit, and I started copywriting for websites, right? So, I mean, it was not journalism, but it got me back into the world of I'm writing for money, right? And then when I decided I did want to get back into journalism, how am I going to get there? I thought what ended up happening was I ended up getting a job at The Atlantic back in New York City, working as a publisher's assistant, foot in the door, right? So I used that. My job as a publisher's assistant was difficult and important, but I'm a capable person. I got a lot of my duties done really fast. We had a branded content studio called Rethink. I think it's still there at The Atlantic. And so I started raising my hand to do some branded content stories. And this is The Atlantic, right? These aren't bad This is still really good.
They're the Atlantic,
yeah. It's like, it's branded content, but it's excellent writing and really good research and really interesting stories. So I started working that angle, and then, started pitching City Lab, which was part of the Atlantic at the time, but then moved over to Bloomberg, and working with an editor there. And that was kind of how I got, my first real bylines as a journalist. And then, they just kept freelancing until I found steady work.
Well, that's a beautiful story in the first place. And I think, do you feel that the years you spent traveling and just kind of, finding your voice were instrumental in, again, making you the better journalist when you did enter the career? Or if you had to redo it, would you have gone straight to, to journalism school again, or whatever it is the charted path looks like?
No, I think that Americans in general have this kind of idea that you have to know what you're going to do right when you graduate high school, and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at university for something that you're not even sure you want to do. Like, other countries, they take gap years, they take time. I think that coming back to journalism later in life, when I was sure it's what I wanted to do, I'm coming in hot, right? Like, I really want to do this now, and I know that, and I know I'm not going to take for granted any of the lessons I'm learning, right? Or think it's a problem for another day, or I don't know. You know how it is when you're in university. You don't always see the woods for the trees. And so I think that being able to come back with a bit of perspective definitely helped me be a better journalist, a more focused journalist.
No, I love that, because I do know so many of my friends at the very least were like, if I do not get a job right now, my whole life is over. And I'm like, calm down, you're a sophomore.
No, that's not true. You're so young, it's not even funny. Like, even now, I've thought about, like, if I ever wanted to leave journalism, which I don't, but if I ever did, I see that as an opportunity. I'm like, wow, I've actually already learned so much. Like, it's not weird that I haven't been doing whatever this future maybe job is, right? It's just like, that's what happens. You can always remake yourself. And I think it's important to pay attention to who you are and know yourself before you commit to a life path. 'Cause otherwise you're just going to be unhappy, or not necessarily. You might know yourself very early on, but it could lead to just feeling burnt out, feeling like you don't really know what you're doing. Am I doing the right thing? Am I just on the rat race? There's more to life.
No, I definitely, I believe in that, but I also believe it's really hard to, especially when you see everyone around you in that same rat race, to take that step back and ask yourself, like, who am I? What do I actually feel passionate about?
Yeah.
How are you able to have the courage, really, to develop perspective and to look at everyone else and say, hey, I'm going to do my own thing?
I think I just really wanted to travel. I just wanted to explore. I was like, I'm young. I can figure it out later. And I worked as a bartender in high school, at university, and made a bunch of money. And so I was like, well, why not just take this and go? I had met other people who had done similar things. Like, one of my best friends growing up, her brother had told me about these websites called like HelpX and Workaways, where you can work in exchange for room and board doing random things, right? Like, so working at a hostel, working at a zoo, helping build an eco resort, and so I was like, wow, this sounds so fun. Like, why wouldn't I do this? And I just used it as a way to travel cheaply, and just get more experience. It also made me entrepreneurial. Like, throughout that, I ended up, finding ways to freelance online. Like I said, copywriting, that led to other random opportunities. So I was always able to kind of make money and keep myself going, which has made me feel like a very resilient person who, as long as I have a laptop, I can make some money. I can make it work.
And I think now more than ever, that's true for more and more people. So really, I think we got to let the fear go a little. And speaking about all the many things that you tried, you've also, written and worked in the kind of intersection between writing and a few different industries, from food to film. Today you work, and you write about mostly, the autonomous vehicle sector and, transportation. What do you think were core lessons in those early stages of your journey when you were exploring different industries that were formative to you being able to eventually find your path and find the thing that, you do today?
Yeah. So you brought up like food writing. When I was living in Australia, I did the copywriting, but I also helped, lead the brand voice for a startup food guide called a Food Guide. And they had a video portion of that as well. So I got to kind of dabble. But mostly I was, it was the best way to experience a new city. I was just going to different cafes and restaurants and just eating delicious food all over the city.
Okay, that's literally the dream.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool, right? And so I was like, do I want to be a food writer? Do I want to be a travel writer? I'd done some travel writing as well, freelance. And I thought, I don't actually, because it's fun, but it's not as serious, and it doesn't, to me, suit what journalism should do or what I want to be doing with journalism, which is to use my platform to, hold businesses and governments accountable, give a voice to those who don't have one. And also I just thought there's not going to be a lot of jobs in this. I was just like, this is not where the money is. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the food. And then you mentioned film. Was this right before the oh, yes. Okay. So I had left my job at the Atlantic, to go traveling again, this time with, a man who would become my husband. And
Congrats.
So it was necessary, because he's from another country and we had to make it work. So, and so when I came back, I was freelance writing and trying to figure it out, but I had some friends in the film industry. They were like, you might like this. You want to get involved. And so I ended up, starting as like an assistant kind of on set, and then working with this really cool DP, director of photography, and just learning a lot about how, the sausage gets made in the film industry. It's fascinating, and I was really starting to pursue that seriously as another career path. I was working for a company called Augusto. They were working on a documentary about the Brooklyn Nets, so that was cool. Very tall people on that team. I met Kevin Durant. I was in the room with Kevin Durant. He's ginormous, like my God. But anyway, it was really cool. I was really enjoying the work, but the pandemic happened and I lost that job. And so that's when I was back into the freelance world, and film wasn't exactly popping off. And then I saw an opportunity with TechCrunch, and I had been angling towards writing about tech for a while. I was writing for Forbes.com at the time as a contributor, focused on social media, which ended up veering into antitrust regulations and kind of misinformation online, and especially at the time, right? This was right around the Trump-Biden election. And yeah, so then I ended up, I'd always wanted to write about technology for the last probably since I was at the Atlantic. So I just thought that was kind of the future. I mean, obviously government is important, but as we've seen, technology has way more of an outsized impact on everyone's daily lives, and it can shape the way we think about politics and government. So anyway, that's a roundabout way of saying that's how I ended up where I am.
No, I do believe that tech and just maybe entrepreneurship or just the world of startups has so much potential to change the day-to-day life of people. I think it moves faster than nonprofit and government. I think it's such a high penetration, of the impact that it can create in the day-to-day lives of individual citizens. So I see that, this is where the future is going, and I can completely understand the sentiment of wanting to kind of, capture all of that and have a career that reflects that. And I'm curious, how did you decide, or how did you get into this very specific niche of, again, the intersection of technology and transportation? I'm a huge fan of the news, hence, why I've been reading about it. But for you, like, of all the things, why was this the niche, and when did you feel it really clicked for you?
It's one of those things you fall into. I mean, this happens a lot in journalism, and people that I've spoken to, when I ask them similar questions, I'm like, how did you get into writing about that? No, I just kind of fell into it. So I would say it's the same with tech, and transportation specifically. My editor had posted something on Twitter at the time about, looking for writers in this beat. I had done in my freelancing career, I'd written quite a bit for CityLab, which was part of the Atlantic, now is part of Bloomberg. And some of those stories, CityLab focuses a lot on like urban life.
The city.
Right? The city. And so a lot of that is transportation and transportation networks. And I always find that access to transportation is so important for sustainability reasons, for access to jobs, for access to leisure. So it was just something I found interesting. And then again, I had come at it with like a tech mind from doing some writing for Forbes.com. And, I hadn't written much about startups yet. So that was a challenge, trying to understand the world of startups and venture and, not make fun of everyone's silly names because there are so many silly names in the tech world.
I can think of a few.
Yeah. I just kind of fell into that. But I mean, TechCrunch has been amazing to work for because there's been so much room to grow and expand. And if I have an interest, if any of us has an interest, they say go for it, right? Mm-hmm. And so writing about transportation has been a cool thing to cut my teeth on in a way because it spans a lot of industries, right? There's a need to look at government documents as well because policy affects the way new transportation technology is rolled out, right? There's we're writing about Uber and Lyft. There's issues with gig worker rights, right? And labor unions and stuff like that. When you're talking about autonomous vehicles, we're talking AI, right? This is real world AI. And so I've been able to explore a lot of different avenues and kind of use my expertise and just being part of TechCrunch, reading it every day. I also do the morning newsletter, so I'm very much aware of just generally what we're writing about on the platform to be able to, cover AI, jump in on a social media story, even like a dabble of crypto here and there, right? I'm one of the hosts of the Equity podcast. That's very venture focused, market focused. So I'm really learning a lot and I have the opportunity to kind of just write about, whatever comes up.
And on that note, there's so much happening in the news days. Do journalists even sleep is the question.
No.
No, you don't? You just recharge. You plug yourself into
sometimes I start to sleep and then I wake up. I don't know. Sometimes other people will tell me about news that like I probably should have known about. I'm like, my husband's like, did you hear about this? I'm like, oh no, fuck, I didn't. I was busy writing, right? Like,
you have to write.
Yeah. It's hard to be on top of it all, especially with the deluge we're getting with this administration. So, I think it's, we do our best. We do our best.
And for all of us who are trying to pace our media diet, I can only assume it's like 100 times accelerated for you and your team. So how do you kind of, stay on top of all of the news? And at the same time, keep track of everything that's happening in those multi-dimensional intersections that, make your beat what it is. Because as you said, you have to pay attention to what's happening in policy, what's happening in tech, what's happening in unions.
Yeah.
Do you just have like 100, Google notifications?
Yeah,
100 tabs open all the time in the brain and the browser.
Yes. Yeah. Well, my desktop's a mess. How do I keep on top of it? Well, I read, of course. I read other outlets. I read blogs. I do spend time on social media on X and Blue Sky. I find them sometimes difficult because the algorithm really just wants me to be angry. And so I'm not finding that it's always as useful, but there's certain people that I'll follow. I'll get notifications for them because they'll be, people who share news first, or maybe it's a company that I'm following and I want to know if they tweet anything or post anything. And then, Google notifications, of course, other newsletters. Newsletters are great, I think, especially like super niche ones. And then just, conversations. And obviously I'm in a position where people want me to write the news. So they're coming to me first with what they're going to announce or, topics that are happening. I think again, we've talked about maintaining relationships with people and talking to people, maintaining those source relationships in companies, or in advocacy groups or in government. I'm routinely reaching out to people to just have a chat. What's going on? What do you think I should be looking out for? And then if they say, oh, well, this lawsuit happened, you should be paying attention to that. Okay, well, then I go on Pacer and I set an alert, right? And I make sure that I'm following that lawsuit. I check back in, right? So, there's like certain sites that I check every day to see if there's been any changes or movement or any new developments. And, that's kind of more for breaking the news than following other people's news. But yeah.
And I feel like there's so much more that goes into the process of writing the article than as readers. We're terribly spoiled, aren't we? We just scroll, and we don't think about you who write it.
Yeah.
So
that's very true. I really feel that a lot of the time because, especially with the conversations around people saying like, oh, the media this, the media that, the media doesn't, accusing us of lying or sharing mistruths. We have to go through a lot of steps before we can print something, right? Otherwise it opens us up to litigation. So the amount of work that you do to ensure something is attributed correctly, that you're fact checking. I mean, of course we're human, things fall through the cracks, right? And media is like not as well resourced as it once was. So that means some more things will fall through, but probably not huge things, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of work on the back end.
And break down for us, how your process is from seeing something and going, oh wow, that's happening, to actually writing about it and having it online for other people to get the same shock.
I guess it really just depends on what it is, right? So, often if it's something like Trump, said about tariffs, right? Then if it affects the industry in which we're writing, then that's a quick story, like get it out, right? So yeah, it's hard to say. Or if another outlet has like a really huge report that they break, now the question is, do we also jump on that? Can we add anything? Can we make it different? Can we add a TechCrunch spin? Can we call someone else? Can we do our own verification of their reporting? We have something called In Brief on TechCrunch, so that's just like really short. If we, want to acknowledge the reporting of another outlet, and a really important piece of news, then we'll just kind of do something really short on that. Other times, we don't want to just take what they say. Oh, reports them. Like we'll take it and we'll say, okay, we need to find the documents as well. We need to verify all of this. We need to reach out to our people. So
there is a lot. Okay, I see.
There's a lot that goes on. It's a team effort a lot of the time. Whenever someone has time, that Slack has been great for being like, hey, does anyone have this contact, or does anyone know how to get into this system?
Well, I'm glad you're using Slack too. That's comforting to know that everyone is the same.
Slack.
The same news
searching
use
Microsoft,
platform.
Which whatever.
But yes, you've been amazing, and I'm just, wondering of all of my friends who want to be journalists out there, and to all the aspiring journalists out there, where do they even start? Like you seem to have like everything figured out, and I'm sure you have like this grand plan since kindergarten. You're like going, but like, where does an aspiring journalist even begin? Especially now that we're in a very rapidly changing kind of landscape of not just the journalism industry, but every industry out there.
I think that, it's hard to say where to start. It'll just depend on the person. And I think you just have to be agile and willing to say yes to any opportunity, and just like indecision is worse than making the wrong decision, right? So if there's any opportunity for you, just take it, just go for it, see how it goes. You don't want to write about, I don't know, traffic or something for the metro section of Newsday, whatever. It's a connection. It is experience. It is something to do, right? I think that's really important. I think, the way that the journalism industry is going now, we're hearing a lot about Substacks, right? And people's, forming newsletters. If you're good at social media and getting a following and having a brand voice and making yourself into a brand, great. I don't know that is the best port of call for people just out of university, because oftentimes you're subscribing to someone because you already know that they are an authority, and you're prepared to listen to what they have to say, versus like some 22-year-old, you're like, I don't know who this person is, right? So while I think the news industry is becoming more decentralized, I do think that you can learn a lot from institutions, or even for independent outlets like 404 Media, for example. They're doing amazing work, small team, amazing work here in New York, reporting on technology, right? I don't know if they're 404 Media. I don't think they're taking, interns or anything, but, you can try to learn, always try to learn from people who know what they're doing and who give you a guiding hand. I've been doing this for a long time, but I still really rely on my editors, on my colleagues, to help me make sure that I'm doing my best reporting and my best writing, right? Like you don't stop learning, right? So finding, I think, those institutions is important, but it's not the end of the world if you don't get that internship or that fellowship. The most important thing is keep writing, keep reading, keep learning about like what makes a story. Get a news sense, right? If there's something that you can't stop thinking about, it could be news. It could be a story, right? So trust your gut, but also just keep reading to try to determine what makes a story. Start learning how to pitch editors if you want to start freelancing, just so you kind of, the feedback you'll get from them a lot of the time will illuminate what that publication looks for example, and also like if you how do I put this? There's some times that I think I have good news sense and I'm like, this is definitely a story. I know it, and then I'll talk to my editor about it. She's like, that's not the story. This is the story though. Like you're in the right
It's
area
there
somewhere, but you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, you're right. That is the story. That's so much better. So just like getting practice, trying your hand, throwing stuff against a wall, seeing what sticks. I also think that getting comfortable in the podcast and video space is going to be huge. Like this is how people are consuming their media, obviously, a lot of the time. And this is how people watch the news. I think learning how news distribution works on places like TikTok and Snapchat will be really important, and Instagram, potentially Blue Sky. I think they've started doing video. So yeah, learning how to be agile with different form factors is going to be really crucial coming up.
Okay, amazing. So last question, close us out. What are the 3 traits of a good writer, if you had to summarize?
A good writer or journalist?
Journalist.
Okay. Curiosity, doggedness, right? Like, don't give up. If you smell something, go for it, right? Like, something smells off, like, follow that money, follow the trail. Humility, I think. And I say this having worked a bit in, like, branded content and creative, like, the wank fest of marketing and advertising, where people have huge egos and you can't provide any feedback. I think good journalists need to be humble and not have an ego about all the red marks on the page from the editor, because that's just there to help you learn. Like you're not gonna, those will lessen over time, but not if you get in your head about it and feel anxious that someone's giving you bad feedback. It doesn't mean you're a bad writer or bad anything. It just means there's more work to be done.
And as hard of a pill that is to swallow, I think that is beautiful advice. And thank you so much for sharing it with me and our audience. I think you've been a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
You should get interviewed more often, I assume, so that to balance out your day in a way.
Yeah, it's a very strange sensation.
But thank you all for enjoying or joining us for this session. I hope you had as much fun I did asking the questions. And with that, we're done with our episode of Changing Reality. See you guys next week.